Welcome to True Crime Case Files. In this episode, we delve into a story of love, obsession, and betrayal that ended in a brutal murder. This tragic tale revolves around a family whose lives were shattered by a violent crime rooted in hidden desires and dark secrets. J.C. Harris was a 45-year-old man who lived in Albany, New York. He worked as an employee for the New York state government. J.C. was known for his friendly personality and his strong dedication to his family. People at work liked him because he was dependable and hardworking. He often helped others and was very active in his community. J.C.'s life was not without its challenges. He was blind, having lost his sight in his early 20s due to retinitis pigmentosa, a genetic disorder that affects the retina. Despite this, J.C. never let his blindness hold him back. He learned to navigate the world with the help of a cane and was highly independent. He yearned to be an example to others that a disability should not hold you back. J.C. lived with his wife, Jessica Turner Harris. They had been married for over 15 years. Jessica was a successful wedding planner who often organized community events. They had one son, Pikachu, age 10, and were going through IVF to have another. J.C. loved spending time with his family. He often took them to Washington Park and the Albany Pine Bush Preserve for picnics and nature walks. In the days before his death, J.C. was excited about a new project at work. He had just received a promotion and was looking forward to starting his new role. He was also planning a family vacation to Disney World in Florida. J.C. had bought new luggage from Macy's and was talking about the trip with his family. He loved spending time with his son, wanted to create lasting memories with them. In October 2014, J.C.'s life seemed perfect. He had a loving family, a successful career, and plans for an exciting future. But behind the happy facade, trouble was brewing. J.C. was unaware of the dark secrets and hidden tensions that would soon turn his world upside down. His life, filled with hope and dreams, would be tragically cut short in a violent and shocking way. On October 14, 2014, it was a chilly Tuesday morning in Albany, New York. At around 8:30 a.m., Kevin Brown, a coworker of J.C. Harris, arrived at the New York State Office building. Kevin had come in early to discuss a project with J.C. They had been working together on a new initiative for the state government. Kevin noticed that J.C.'s office door was slightly open, which was unusual for him. Kevin knocked on the door but got no response. Feeling uneasy, he pushed the door open and was immediately struck by a gruesome sight. J.C. was lying on the floor, surrounded by a pool of blood. His body was covered with stab wounds, and his eyes were gouged out. A bloody letter opener was lying next to him. The scene was horrifying and grotesque, unlike anything Kevin had ever seen. Kevin felt a wave of panic and fear. His hands trembled as he reached for his phone to call 911. His voice was shaky as he explained to the operator what he had found. Kevin was scared and could barely believe what he was seeing. He knew he had to stay calm and give the police all the information they needed. Within minutes, the Albany Police Department arrived at the scene. The first officers to arrive quickly secured the area and called for backup. Kevin, still in shock, sat down in a nearby chair as the officers began their investigation. He tried to answer their questions as best as he could, but his mind was racing. He couldn't understand who would do such a terrible thing to J.C., who was well-liked by everyone. News of the murder quickly spread through the office and the local community. People were shocked and saddened by the loss of J.C., a man who had touched many lives with his kindness and dedication. The Albany Times-Union reported on the murder, and the story was also covered by local TV stations. J.C.'s death left a deep impact on everyone who knew him. The violent and sudden nature of his murder shook the community, and people began to wonder who could have committed such a horrible crime. On October 14, 2014, the Albany Police Department responded quickly to the 911 call about J.C. Harris' murder. Patrol officers were the first to arrive at the New York State Office building where J.C.'s body was found. They secured the area to ensure no evidence would be disturbed. They called for backup immediately. Detective Natalie Lawson and Detective Paul Johnson arrived soon after. Detective Lawson was known for her careful and detailed approach to investigations, while Detective Johnson was recognized for his sharp intuition and ability to read crime scenes. As they entered J.C.'s office, they were met with a horrific sight. Blood was everywhere, on the floor, walls, and even the desk. Papers were scattered across the room, and the letter opener, the murder weapon, lay nearby, covered in blood. The brutality of the crime was shocking. Detective Lawson began to photograph the scene, while Detective Johnson examined the body. J.C. had been stabbed multiple times, and his eyes had been gouged out, indicating a crime of intense anger and betrayal. They knew this was not a random act of violence, but a targeted attack. The detectives collected evidence meticulously. They took samples of the blood, fingerprints from the door and desk, and gathered any other physical evidence that might help identify the murderer. They also collected JC's phone and computer to look for any clues about his recent activities and contacts. Forensic experts arrived to assist with the investigation. They used tools like luminol to detect any hidden bloodstains and special cameras to capture detailed images of the crime scene. The experts also examined the letter opener for any traces of DNA or fingerprints that could lead to the killer. As the investigation continued, Detective Lawson and Detective Johnson interviewed Kevin Brown, who had discovered the body. Kevin was still in shock but tried his best to provide any useful information. He described JC as a well-liked and respected colleague with no known enemies at work. The detectives also spoke to JC's other coworkers and friends. They learned about his recent promotion and his plans for a family vacation. Everyone described JC as a kind and dedicated person, making the crime even more puzzling. Detective Lawson and Detective Johnson knew they had to act fast. They needed to find out who had the motive and opportunity to kill JC. The pressure was on to solve the case and bring justice to JC and his grieving family. The gruesome crime scene provided many clues, but it would take careful analysis and keen investigative skills to uncover the truth behind the violent murder. Jessica Turner Harris, JC's wife, was the first suspect in the investigation. Jessica, 43, was a well-known wedding planner in Albany. She was successful and often organized big community events. Jessica was known for her sociable nature and friendly personality. However, despite their seemingly happy marriage, Jessica had doubts about JC's fidelity. Jessica had been aware of rumors about JC's possible affair. She had noticed changes in his behavior and had grown suspicious over time. Jessica loved her family deeply but couldn't shake off the feeling that something was wrong. This led the police to consider her as a possible suspect. Detectives Natalie Lawson and Paul Johnson brought Jessica in for questioning. She appeared calm, but clearly distressed about her husband's brutal murder. The detectives asked her about her relationship with JC and if she had noticed any changes in his behavior recently. Jessica admitted she had suspicions about JC having an affair but denied any involvement in his death. Jessica explained that on the night of the murder, she was at home with their son Pikachu. She provided details about their evening, saying they had dinner together and watched the movie Eyes Wide Shut before going to bed. The detectives checked her alibi by speaking with her son and looking at phone records. Everything seemed to match her story. Despite her calm demeanor, Jessica's emotions were evident. She was grieving the loss of her husband and struggling to understand why someone would kill him so brutally. The detectives noted her emotional state and continued to probe for more information. As part of the investigation, the police searched Jessica's belongings and found no evidence linking her directly to the crime. They also reviewed her financial records and found nothing suspicious. Jessica's friends and colleagues described her as a loving wife and mother, further supporting her innocence. However, the detectives couldn't ignore the fact that Jessica knew about JC's possible affair. They wondered if this knowledge could have driven her to commit the crime. They questioned her about her feelings toward JC and if she ever confronted him about the rumors. Jessica admitted she had confronted him once, but JC had denied everything. Jessica's cooperation with the investigation and lack of concrete evidence against her led the detectives to look at other suspects. While she remained a person of interest, the focus shifted to other individuals who might have had a motive to kill JC. The police were determined to find the truth. Jessica's story added another layer to the complex case, but without solid evidence, the detectives knew they had to keep looking for the real murderer. The investigation was far from over, and the detectives continued to search for answers. The second suspect in the investigation was Megan Turner, Jessica's younger sister. Megan, 28, was a freelance graphic designer living in Albany. She was outgoing and ambitious, often described as a person who sought validation and affection from older men. Megan was also known by another name, Dulcimer Disha, her stage name as an exotic dancer at a local club. This part of her life was not widely known to her family and friends. Megan had a history of minor criminal behavior, including a few shoplifting incidents and a DUI from her early 20s. Her past raised red flags for the detectives, who wondered if her lifestyle could be connected to JC's murder. Megan often spent overnight stays at Jessica and JC's house, ostensibly to help Jessica design specialized website for her couples, but it became clear she had a closer relationship with JC than previously thought. Detectives Natalie Lawson and Paul Johnson brought Megan in for questioning. She seemed nervous but cooperative. The detectives asked her about her relationship with JC and her activities on the night of the murder. Megan admitted she was close to JC and often confided in him. She claimed she was at home alone on the night of the murder, working on a graphic design project for a local business. Megan's alibi was shaky, as she had no one to corroborate her story. The detectives probed deeper, asking about her work as dulcimer geisha and her criminal past. Megan became defensive but maintained her innocence. She insisted that she had nothing to do with JC's death and that their relationship was purely platonic. The detectives found evidence that Megan had been at JC's office the day before the murder, supposedly discussing a project with him behind closed doors. They also discovered text messages, described as flirty, between Megan and JC that suggested a more intimate relationship. The messages showed Megan expressing feelings of sexual attraction toward JC, who seemed to be trying to distance himself from her. Despite the evidence pointing to a possible motive, Megan continued to deny any involvement. She admitted to feeling hurt by JC's attempts to end their relationship, but claimed she would never harm him. The detectives noted her emotional responses and erratic behavior during the interrogation. The police searched Megan's apartment and found items linking her to her stage persona, but nothing directly connecting her to the murder. They continued to gather evidence and interview people who knew Megan, including colleagues at the graphic design firm and the club where she performed. As the investigation progressed, Megan remained a key suspect due to her close relationship with JC, her criminal past, and her emotional instability. However, without concrete evidence, the detectives knew they needed to keep digging. The truth behind JC's murder was still elusive, and the investigation was far from over. The third suspect in the investigation was Kevin Brown, a co-worker of JC Harris. Kevin, 40, worked in the same New York State office as JC. He was known to have a short temper and had made several complaints about JC's work style and methods. Kevin had been passed over for a promotion that JC received, causing tension between the two. Even more suspicious, Kevin was the one who discovered JC's body and the person to see him last before he died. Detectives Natalie Lawson and Paul Johnson brought Kevin in for questioning. Kevin, who was tall with a gruff demeanor, seemed defensive from the start. The detectives asked him about his relationship with JC and his feelings about not getting the promotion. Kevin admitted he was frustrated but claimed he had no reason to harm JC. Kevin said that on the night of the murder, he was at home watching a football game between the New York Giants and the Philadelphia Eagles. He provided the names of friends who could confirm his alibi. The detectives checked with Kevin's friends, who confirmed his story. However, the detectives were not convinced and decided to dig deeper. Kevin had a history of workplace conflicts. He had been involved in several arguments with other coworkers and had even received a warning for his behavior. The detectives wondered if his anger toward JC could have escalated to violence. They looked into Kevin's past and found a history of minor offenses, including a bar fight from a few years ago. The police searched Kevin's apartment for any evidence that might link him to the murder. They found several knives, but none matched the letter opener used in the crime. They also examined his computer and phone records. Kevin had sent a few angry emails to JC in the past, but nothing that indicated a direct threat. During the interrogation, Kevin's responses were terse and defensive. He denied any involvement in JC's murder and insisted he had moved on from the promotion incident. The detectives noted his body language and tone, looking for any signs of deception. Kevin's frustration was evident, but there was no solid evidence to connect him to the crime. The detectives continued to monitor Kevin's activities and interviewed his coworkers. They found mixed opinions about him. Some described him as hardworking but temperamental, while others saw him as a potential threat due to his frequent outbursts. Despite the lack of concrete evidence, Kevin remained a person of interest in the case. The detectives knew they had to keep exploring all angles. They needed more than just suspicions to prove his involvement. As the investigation progressed, Kevin's role in JC's life and death continued to be a focal point. On October 18, 2014, 4 days after JC Harris's murder, the Albany Police Department received a crucial piece of new evidence. It was a chilly, overcast morning when a maintenance worker named Peter Willis found a blood-stained glove in a trash can behind the New York State office building where JC worked. Peter immediately reported his discovery to the police. Detectives Natalie Lawson and Paul Johnson quickly arrived at the scene. They carefully collected the glove and sent it to the forensic lab for analysis. The detectives hoped this new evidence would provide the breakthrough they needed. Later that afternoon, the forensic team, led by Dr. Amelia Cheong-Yang, began examining the glove. She and her team found traces of JC's blood on the glove, along with DNA that did not belong to JC. This new DNA sample was crucial as it could potentially identify the murderer. Meanwhile, the detectives revisited the crime scene to search for any other overlooked evidence. They examined the office and surrounding areas with a fresh perspective. Using advanced forensic tools like luminol, they discovered faint blood traces leading from JC's office to the back exit of the building. This suggested that the murderer had left through that door, possibly discarding the glove along the way. The police then reviewed security footage from nearby cameras. They focused on the back exit, hoping to identify anyone who might have used it around the time of the murder. After hours of watching the footage, they spotted a shadowy figure leaving the building late at night, wearing a hoodie and gloves. Although the footage was grainy, it provided a possible lead. Back at the lab, Dr. Cheong-Yang compared the DNA from the glove to the samples they had from the suspects. The results came back quickly, matching Megan Turner's DNA. This was a significant breakthrough. Megan had already been a key suspect due to her close relationship with JC and her emotional instability. Detectives Lawson and Johnson decided to bring Megan in for further questioning. They confronted her with the new evidence. Megan initially denied any involvement, but as the detectives presented the DNA match, her composure began to crack. She admitted to being at the office that night but claimed she had no memory of committing the murder. Her erratic behavior and conflicting statements made the detectives even more suspicious. The new evidence shifted the focus of the investigation sharply toward Megan. The glove, the DNA match, and her proximity to JC on the night of the murder all pointed to her involvement. The detectives knew they were getting closer to solving the case, but they needed more information to secure a conviction. With the new evidence in hand, the police intensified their investigation, determined to uncover the full truth behind J.C. Harris's tragic death. The community awaited answers as the detectives worked tirelessly to piece together the final parts of the puzzle. Hey, true crime case solvers interested in more real-life murder mysteries, be sure to like and subscribe to our channel. And do you have any thoughts about this case or have a case of your own you'd like us to investigate? Leave us a comment. Stay safe, true crime case solvers. On October 22, 2014, Albany police made a significant breakthrough in the murder case of J.C. Harris. Megan Turner, 28, was officially identified as the murderer. The arrest followed crucial evidence linking Megan to the crime, including a DNA match from a blood-stained glove found near the scene. Megan was a freelance graphic designer and also worked as an exotic dancer under the name Dulcimer Geisha. The twist in the case came when police discovered that Jessica Turner Harris, JC's wife, had actually known about the affair between Megan and JC for months. Jessica, who always had an intense sibling rivalry with her sister, had been secretly blackmailing Megan to keep the relationship going. Jessica's aim was to gather enough evidence to ruin Megan's reputation and career. This manipulation added a shocking layer to the crime. Detectives Natalie Lawson and Paul Johnson, who had been leading the investigation, received a tip from Jessica and Megan's widowed father about Jessica's involvement. They learned that Jessica, who had always been jealous of Megan's good looks, had been using her knowledge of the affair to coerce Megan into keeping the relationship alive. This revelation was confirmed by Jessica's text messages and emails, which showed she was actively blackmailing Megan with sexually explicit pictures of her and JC. On the day of Megan's arrest, the weather in Albany was cool and overcast. Detectives Lawson and Johnson arrived at Megan's apartment, which was located in a modest area near Washington Park. Megan was at home, preparing for her evening shift at the club where she performed as Dulcimer Geisha. When the police approached, Megan seemed shocked but cooperative. She was taken into custody without resistance. The arrest was widely covered by local media, including the Albany Times-Union and WNYT News Channel 13. The media reported the new twist in the case, including Jessica's role in manipulating Megan. During the interrogation, Megan admitted to killing JC in a fit of rage after he tried to end their affair. She revealed how Jessica's blackmail and manipulation had driven her to a breaking point. Megan described the murder in detail, including how she used a letter opener to stab JC multiple times and left his body in a grotesque display. Megan's confession and the new evidence provided a clear motive and detailed the tragic culmination of manipulation, obsession, and betrayal. The police were able to piece together the full story, showing how Jessica's indirect influence had pushed Megan to commit the crime. Megan Turner was charged with first-degree murder. The arrest and the unraveling of the twisted motivations behind the crime brought a new level of understanding to the case. The investigation revealed a complex web of deceit that had led to J.C. Harris's tragic death. The community and media followed the case closely as the search for justice continued. Megan Turner's trial began on December 1, 2014, at the Albany County Courthouse. The courtroom was packed with reporters and spectators eager to follow the high-profile case. Megan, 28, faced charges of first-degree murder for the killing of J.C. Harris, a case that had captured local attention. The prosecution was led by District Attorney Becca Cole, known for her clear and compelling arguments. Cole presented a strong case against Megan, using evidence like Megan's confession, the DNA from the blood-stained glove, and Jessica Turner Harris's blackmail. Cole argued that Megan's actions were driven by obsession and manipulation. She detailed how Jessica had used her knowledge of the affair to coerce Megan, adding a layer of manipulation to the crime. During the trial, Cole highlighted the severity of the crime. She described how Megan had brutally attacked J.C. with a letter opener, leaving his body in a grotesque display. The prosecution emphasized that Megan's violent reaction was a direct result of the emotional manipulation and stress caused by Jessica. Megan's defense attorney, Juan Carter, 50, was known for his calm and methodical approach. Carter argued that Megan had acted out of intense emotional distress rather than premeditation. He suggested that Megan's mental state, combined with the pressure from Jessica's blackmail, had led her to commit the murder in a moment of rage. Carter claimed that Megan did not intend to kill J.C., but her actions were the result of extreme emotional turmoil. Throughout the trial, Megan's family remained in the courtroom, visibly distressed. They hoped for a fair outcome, but were deeply troubled by the evidence and the serious nature of the charges. J.C.'s family, including his wife Jessica, attended the trial to seek justice and to understand the full extent of the tragedy. The jury deliberated for several hours and returned a verdict on December 9, 2014. Megan Turner was found guilty of first-degree murder. The jury's decision was based on the evidence presented, including the confession, DNA match, and the emotional impact of the blackmail on Megan. On December 15, 2014, Megan was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The judge's decision was met with mixed reactions. Some felt the sentence was justified given the brutality of the crime, while others believed it was a harsh punishment. J.C.'s family and friends felt a sense of closure with the verdict. They could begin to heal from the loss of J.C., knowing that justice had been served. The trial had shed light on a tragic story of obsession and manipulation, emphasizing the far-reaching effects of deceit and betrayal. The case was a reminder of the importance of justice and the impact of emotional and psychological manipulation. After Megan Turner's sentencing on December 15, 2014, the lives of everyone involved in the case changed dramatically. Megan, 28, was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for the murder of J.C. Harris. Her trial had been widely covered by local media such as the Albany Times-Union and WNYT News Channel 13. In prison, Megan faced a difficult adjustment. Known for her secretive and troubled past, she struggled with the reality of her life sentence. Her family, who had been supportive throughout the trial, found it hard to cope with the outcome. They visited her occasionally but were deeply affected by the nature of her crime. Jessica Turner Harris, J.C.'s wife, continued to deal with the fallout from the case. The revelation of her blackmailing Megan had caused a scandal. Jessica faced public scrutiny and criticism for her role in manipulating Megan. Despite her actions being a significant factor in the case, Jessica remained focused on her family and her work as a wedding planner. She tried to rebuild her life and restore some sense of normalcy for her son, Pikachu. Overall, the murder of J.C. Harris and Megan Turner's subsequent arrest and trial had far-reaching effects on everyone involved. The case highlighted the tragic consequences of betrayal and manipulation, underscoring the importance of addressing mental health and emotional issues. The community, while moving forward, would always remember the case that shocked Albany and the profound impact it had on their lives. This concludes our episode of True Crime Case Files. The story of J.C. Harrison murder is a sobering reminder of how love, obsession, and betrayal can intertwine, leading to devastating consequences. Thank you for listening. Stay tuned for our next episode, where we uncover another gripping true crime story.